Our book, Without Warning, Diary of a Disaster, is a true story of the worst disaster in the history of Southern California, the collapse of the St. Francis Dam shortly before midnight on Monday, March 12, 1928. It's a story told by the actual survivors, most all of them have passed away by now, and by the people who helped build the dam and those who searched for the bodies. But it's more than the story of a dam that collapsed. It's a story about a thirsty city, Los Angeles, and about the genius who would become a hero when he quenched that thirst, and then a villain when the dam he built collapsed, without warning, and killed upwards of 450 people. William Mulholland completed the 225-mile Owens Valley Los Angeles Aqueduct in 1911, but in the early 1920s he tried to take more water from the once lush valley, and it triggered an all-out water war. That was one of the reasons Mulholland decided to build the 185-foot-tall St. Francis Dam. It would be nestled between two powerhouses, Powerhouse Number 1 and Powerhouse Number 2, about 4 miles downstream. It was aqueduct water that turned the giant turbines that generated electricity for Los Angeles. In 1924, construction began on the concrete gravity arch dam. By 1926, they were turning aqueduct into the new reservoir, a reservoir that would eventually stretch for 4 miles up the San Francisco Canyon. On Monday, March 12, 1928, the dam was full to the brim. The wind was even whipping water over the spillway. On that day, the dam keeper, Tony Harnischfeger, shown here when he was an armed guard on the aqueduct's enormous jawbone siphon, was worried about a new leak. He was so worried he convinced Water Bureau Chief William Mulholland and his assistant to drive up from Los Angeles to take a look. 2.5 minutes before midnight, however, the mighty dam broke apart and sent a 150-foot wall of water down the canyon on a 55-mile journey to the ocean near Ventura. 50 years later, in 1978, we started tracking down the survivors and recorded their incredible stories on audio tape.
It was 2.5 minutes before midnight 50 years ago today. Sleeping communities scattered throughout San Francisco Canyon north of Saugus had no warning. One moment all was peaceful, then havoc. The St. Francis Dam, built less than 2 years before by William Mulholland, had collapsed. By the time the raging flood reached the ocean 54 miles away, more than 400 persons had been killed. A half-century later, hardly anyone has heard of St. Francis Dam. For whatever reason, it's a seldom mentioned part of the state's history. But these people remember, these are some of the survivors of the St. Francis Dam disaster. This is the first and perhaps the only reunion of St. Francis Dam survivors.
We lost all of our property, our house and garage and barns and everything.
And you lost some of your neighbors?
My brother-in-law, his brother was drowned.
We had to get out quick, just barely got out.
Where you find your brother?
My brother was just behind me. She would come out onto the road and then out. He couldn't get out till I got out. I had to get out of his way. Well, the water was coming up on the highway as I went by, and they was 50 feet behind me, and it just washed them off.
No more than a handful of people in the world know anything about the collapse at the St. Francis Dam. That's why this reunion, to call at least slight attention to the littlest known but worst disaster in Southern California's history. From Valencia, Rita Diamond, News Center 4.
Ray Sylvie told us of how he was at the control board at Powerhouse Number 1 upstream when all hell broke loose. When the water hit Powerhouse Number 2 below the dam, it crushed the two-story building like an eggshell. Lillian Curtis was asleep in a little city-owned house like this one. She would tell us of how the water crushed their home and took the lives of her husband and 2 daughters. Miraculously, she was able to scramble up the hillside with her 3-year-old son Danny. They would meet up with the only other survivor of their little community. He would also tell us his story. Our story follows the path of the churning water as it literally erased ranches and small communities from the face of the earth. By the time the water was nearing Santa Paula, it had spread to more than a mile wide. Highway Patrolman Thornton Edwards received a call from the phone operator. He'd never heard of the St. Francis Dam, but he jumped on his new Indian 4 motorcycle and, siren blazing, woke up the city. He would later play a motorcycle cop in the movie The Grapes of Wrath.
What is it, a wreck?
Where do you think you're going?
A fellow named Spencer sent us. Said there was work picking peaches.
Oh, you want to work, huh?
Sure do.
All right, just pull up in line there. Okay for this one. Take him through.
What's the matter? What happened?
Oh, a little trouble up there, but you'll get through all right. Go ahead.
The water and debris backed up on the bridge until the pressure was just too great. When it collapsed, it sent another wall of water surging through the city. The flood destroyed Thornton Edwards' home and scores of others. We interviewed the workers and the relatives who flocked to the scene to search for the victims or to identify the bodies. Today, it takes a keen eye to notice there was once a dam here. For the past 74 years, the city of Los Angeles has wanted people to forget. But we're not writing this book for the city of Los Angeles. We're writing it for those who want people to remember.